What is the most painful thing someone has ever told you? Serious. Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. To act like a humani was 16 and it was someone I considered my friend. She yelled this at me during theater one time. I can't even remember what I was doing. Something about that hit me worse than any other, meaner insult could have. I started to think so negatively about myself and interactions with other people. I realized that I really didn't act like my peers. I found out later that I have ADHD and I am a proud alien. Not all of us have to be human. I have taken that insult and now say, no, I won't mask myself just to please you. I had a lot of fun with you. I meant everything I said. I still love you, but I just want to try other guys. I hope you understand, goodbye. Then she ghosted me after we had many very serious convos about our future together. I immediately blamed myself. I then worked on myself, filled out my 6 feet minus 3 inches frame, became a doctor, had some short relationships. These women are still very good friends and we support each other and hang out, just wanted different things with relationship deal breakers for each other. That helped my self-esteem, and found my now wife who is my dream girl and we have an amazing son. Last I saw, years ago, the girl who wanted to sow her oats was some dissatisfied train wreck, because that mentality of greener grass also played into her employment. I just felt bad for her. But what she said hurt like hell when she said it and ghosted me, like I was nothing. I was on my way home from a business trip. It was early Saturday morning. I was driving on I-5 heading south to the airport. My phone rang. It was my good buddy Chris. He asked what I was doing, and I said, driving south on I-5. He told me to pull over. And then he told me that our good friend of over a decade had died from a tragic accident the night before. I thanked him for telling me the news, said I was sorry, and hung up. I walked into the airport, and after checking in, found the closest bar to the terminal. The bartender took a look at me, and without hesitation asked how many drinks I needed, and what I liked. I sat in that bar for an hour staring at the TV, my mind racing, emotions boiling up. I got on the plane, put the headphones on, and closed my eyes. It was the loneliest 6 hours of my entire life. My wife picked me up at the airport, and I told her the news, and I was pretty choked up. After that, every death notification I've gotten of people close to me was when I was driving. This has happened with my mother, my father, my nephew, and a few close friends. When my phone rings while I am driving, and it's somebody I know very well, my heart skips a beat. I'm not 100% sure this is * most painful, but it's up there. My wife asked me to change a song we were listening to in the car. Later she explained it finally clicked why that was. She said she remembered a guy she kinda knew back in high school who was in a band that played that style of music. She then said, roughly, great. That's another guy who raped me before I was 18 that I've got to tell my EMDR therapist about. I guess that's number 12 now. It at least helped me to understand why going to therapy is both extremely helpful to her and yet incredibly difficult to the point she doesn't want to go back every week. Not directly to me, but my parents split when I was a toddler and one of my first memories was my dad yelling at my mom, "I don't give a fuck about her, me, or if she goes to foster care," before dipping out of my life for several years. He ended up getting full custody later on and we became close. It was just me and him against the world. I was his little mini-me. I've never told him that I remember. Besides people wishing that I would commit suicide and go to hell. People telling me that I should go back to where I came from. A place that was unsafe, where I was very sick in more than one way, and that would eventually get very damaged by natural disasters and overpopulation. People pointing out my flaws, starting with my lack of common sense instead of stating what the problem is and how to fix it. I found the women I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. She had a bit of a temper and was disillusioned about life in general. Following her friend on Facebook and not understanding why we weren't as happy as they all were. She couldn't understand why they all seemed so happy and we weren't. She didn't understand that people don't show how unhappy they are to others on Facebook. I dropped everything and changed who I was and what I wanted, to make her happy. Went back to school to change careers to make her happy, and the worse she got, the more she treated me like shit. One day, I was offered the job that I wanted, that would set up a great new life for us. The catch, we had to move 4 hours away, from a town where she barely had any friends. That was the end of us as far as she saw it. We fought about it. She told me she didn't want to leave where we lived. She was a waitress at a job she hated. So I decided that moving and taking the job was the best thing for me. We talked about me moving over first and her coming over when she was ready. I'm an idiot, obviously. What she really did was find a new guy. I was doing some hiring for the job when one of her friends that I didn't know came in to interview. I asked how he knew about the job. He told me that a girl, my girlfriend, told her about it. I asked how he knew her. He told me that she was dating his friend, with a different name than my own. I confronted her about it and asked her how she could treat me that way after everything. She told me that when I chose to take a job in a new city, that she didn't like, that she had decided that I wasn't right for her and started dating again. So the job that she had me go back to school to get, the career that she made me take, the life changes that she told me we needed to make, came to fruition, and she threw my heart in the trash, because she didn't love me enough to change towns. The hurt more than anything I've ever felt or even considered. I had bought a ring. I was going to spend my life with her. She still tried to be my friend after, but eventually stopped trying because she couldn't understand why I wouldn't meet her new boyfriend. That she said she was madly in love with. She couldn't understand that his happiness came at the expense of mine and that I couldn't bear to see it. I still can't bring myself to open my heart to another woman. That was 7 years ago. I can't see myself giving my heart to another. I don't think I ever really got it back after I gave it to her. That, under no circumstances should you ever come out to your father. My mom told me that the day I came out to her as trans I was 15 and so scared and shaken about coming out to her that before even saying she accepted me or loved me, which she did, she dropped that. She told me KN my 18th birthday why. Turns out he was a part of a neo-Nazi gang in the Sydney area in the 90s. He even has a swastika tattooed on his chest. When my dad told me him and my stepmom were parting ways due to an affair he was having with the woman he's with today. He met her on a business trip and would leave the state to see her behind our backs. She knew he was with someone and had kids the entire time. My stepmom was the only human that ever treated me with respect and love. She was there for me when I needed someone, always stood up for me against my dad's bullshit. The only woman who had a backbone and could put him in his place. I was so devastated I thought I was having a heart attack many times during the entire event. At one point I had to pull over and almost called an ambulance because I thought I actually was from the stress. I never cried so hard in my life. My eyes were swollen shut for weeks. Her and I are still in contact and get together for holidays, birthdays. I have never forgiven my dad for what he did. Too many details, but I had never felt heartbreak like that like I did in that moment. I'm just glad your father isn't around to see this. After I told her that I was dating a woman. My dad passed away suddenly from brain cancer in 2018. As of this post, I've been dating this woman for 8 months. But my mom still refuses to tell our family members that I'm dating anyone, even when directly asked. Because, it's your business. Meanwhile she dotes on my sister's husband, deservedly so, he's awesome, and said she would have no problem telling anyone, had I been dating a man. Okay mom. My family was at family friend's house in another state. A neighbor was over talking about his problematic brother. My dad makes a sarcastic comment like, "Herdeger, I bet he's not as bad as my son," as I am standing right there in front of everyone. And the neighbor curiously asks, "Have you ever called the cops on your son?" And I have no idea what was said after because I was so internally uncomfortable I checked out. Keep in mind I never actually did anything wrong other than suffer from depression and internalize all of it. I never had any of the problematic behaviors even normal teens can exhibit. Was so stupid. Still think about it. I recently was told I'm a 5/10 because I'm black. Not BC I have some acne or a little out of shape. BC I'm black. I can't be mad, though, because it's a preference, right? Rant. Tipsy woozy face cocktail. I've always worried about that in my dating life. It sucks that some people still look at skin color and deem you less desirable or attractive. My ex used to say things like, if you were white, if only you had a smaller nose or white people's hair. It would be nice to suck on pink nipples. It tore me up. I'm so insecure that I need to bring up the race issue to know what I'm getting myself into when it comes to someone new. Even for black men in my area, I've been too dark. Even though I'm not. I've been told I'm mocha. Even if I was dark, so what? Why are we still so focused on skin tone, color? We're humans. We're people. I need good people in my life, and it's hard to find. Tired of being fuckable and not dateable. Sad face. Many years ago, in her grief, my loving mother called me into the living room where dad demanded she repeat herself. To which she turns to me, looks me in the eyes, and said, "I can't stand you anymore." Funny thing is, Dad was the abusive one, and Mom swore until she'd passed away that she never said it. I forgave her long ago, and felt so sorry for her. To be lost in such pain to say something she never meant. She rests with God now, and the blood cancer's ensuring I'm following not too long after. Hold the ones in pain close, especially when they lash out, because that's when they need you the most. Whether you believe in God or not, I truly hope He blesses anyone reading this. I went to a therapist in middle school for self-harm thoughts I was having. They suggested that I switch to a more diverse school. Not ghetto enough for the ghetto kind of thought process. I was excited by the prospect of leaving the place that was the cause of so much of my pain, as after switching classes 3 times, I was still having trouble making friends and getting bullied mercilessly. My mom didn't say much to the therapist, but on the way home lamented about all the trouble she had in switching both my younger brothers to different schools. All that culminated in her asking me, "I cannot afford to go through the trouble to switch you to a different school. Can you bear with being in that school for me?" As a kid, all I heard was, "I am not important to make sacrifices for. I am a burden." Mother still complains about my low self-esteem. A year and a half ago, the person I loved the most told me that she didn't want to be friends with me and that she didn't feel comfortable at my side anymore, some months after telling her that I was in love with her. I'm an introverted person, and I barely get to feel a connection with anyone. This girl is just amazing. I felt very natural and confident with her, so reading that hurt a lot. It still hurts as I keep thinking about her. Is the only thing in my life that has led me to therapy to try to overcome that impact. I wasn't told this because I was in the room when it happened, but nothing has topped it to date. I've been with my girlfriend for close to a decade at this point. When we first started dating, she told me she was super close with her dad because of shit she went through in her childhood with her parents. Like they would go everywhere together and have really fun times like a parent and child should. When he has kids with his new wife, she loves them more than life and helps raise them to the point she called them, "my boys." He would call her every week in college to see how she was doing and tell her she was loved and all that. All around great dad. We moved back to where she grew up for jobs after college. She comes to me and says I need to tell my dad I'm bisexual. I want him to know before I tell anyone else in my family. I support her and go with her that night. She tells him. He starts crying, so she goes over and hugs him. He pushes her away and tells us to leave. Now she's crying and I lose my shit on the guy telling him what the fuck, that's your daughter, she's no different than she was last year, etc. He then says, "I don't want you around my sons anymore. You're a bad influence and I can't expose them to that lifestyle." Full-blown sobbing from my girlfriend at this point. She runs out to the car. You know when you've reached a point of such pure anger that you're like, calm? That's where I am at his point. I tell him exactly what I think of him and leave the house. He hasn't called or texted her since. She hasn't seen her brother since either. I've never seen another person in such pain in my life. There's been a decent handful of harmful things that people have said to me. I'll start by saying both of my parents are absolutely better people now that I am in college. They have both apologized in their own ways for the pretty shitty years I had in middle school. In middle school, I was really struggling with what I now know to be depression and anxiety. Nearly my entire class in middle school bullied me either to my face or behind my back, and it hurt me really bad emotionally. I've heard my mom talking about her depression, and I confronted her and told her that I think that I also have depression. She looked me in the eyes and told me that no, I don't have depression, and she knows because she has it. Around the same time, I was in a gifted kid class called Mosaics. My dad, whenever I tripped up and messed up on something, forgot something, or was too lazy to do something, he would always say something along the lines of, "Maybe we should just take you out of Mosaics," or, "Isn't Mosaics for gifted kids?" Lastly, my first girlfriend, near the end of our relationship, I asked if I was ugly. I was still undiagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, and she replied with, "I don't date people who are obsessed with looking good," which I promptly took as, "Yeah, you ugly." This is how pathetic I am. Only time I've ever fallen head over heels over someone was back in '98, but I was a rebound for her. And I'm still not really over it. Now that I have my head screwed on straight, I realize you're not even the sort of person I make friends with. First time I ever had to cut a piece of my personality off to stay sane. By no means the last, but definitely the worst. Haven't been able to feel that strongly about anything in the last 25-ish years. I was tripping on acid with my ex. Always had the feeling he wasn't physically attracted to me. He was bi but liked women more, even said so after we split. I am laying on the bed with him telling him all the features and reasons why I love him. I poured my fucking heart out. I asked him, what do you love about me? And the only thing he could say was, your teeth, which are gnarly and rotten. I am really self-conscious about them and it fucking crushed me. He apologized. I almost cried and looked at him waiting for an answer. He hesitated and started listing off cliché things, then got mad. BCUZ. Why does it matter? On top of being hypersensitive cuz I was tripping, this was something that had been a feeling that was eating me up and was trying to let go of for a while. I couldn't though. After he said that, a few months after, I found out he and my roommate that was a girl had been secretly dating for nearly 2 years. When I come home from working a job out of state for the whole summer and ignore the fact my dog I've had since my sister was 6 months old wasn't there to greet me like she always had before I left. She had died halfway into the time I was there. My parents didn't even have to tell me. The moment they said they needed to tell me something, I broke down. And #X200B. And #X200B. Funny enough, the day she passed, I saw the one and only cardinal while I was up there. I had woken up surprisingly early, no alarm, and looked out the window. The bird and I stared at each other for like 15 minutes before it flew away and I started my day. My family believes my grandpa comes back to visit as a cardinal. That connect made my heart hurt even more. Glad my parents waited to tell me, but also glad my grandpa didn't, even if I couldn't understand. Before my dad died, he told me I could have the first Masonic ring he had ever gotten. Was not an expensive ring, but being in the Masons was one of the very few things we had in common. My mother was there for the conversation and said she would get it for me. My dad died 2 days later, so I asked my mom for the ring so I could wear it to the funeral, and she looked me dead in the eye and said, I know what your dad said, but I am going to give the ring to your brother. It may not be a big deal to some, but to me it was devastating. Over the next few days I tried to talk to her about it, but she would turn and walk away. I asked my brother about it and all he said was, sucks to be you. The 6th of November 2015 was the last time I spoke to my brother. The 10th of November 2015 was the last time I spoke to my mother. Well, it wasn't in words, but my cat, don't laugh. If you do, it's because you don't understand the emotional intelligence of these animals, told me goodbye for the last time one night. I rescued her from abuse when she was just a year old, right before my 12th birthday, a calico named Zoe, like the Empress. I got my first girlfriend that year and Zoe hated her. It was the only competition she had for my time other than football practice and school. She would wait at the front door for me every day. Then when that girl broke my heart, as young loves always do, Zoe came and kneaded my ribs. Which was her way of comforting me and showing love. I realized then, that as much as I took care of her, my cat was trying to take care of me, too. She followed me around and played fetch or hide and seek with me until the day I left home for college. I visited every few months and she always had actual tears in her eyes when greeting me, meowing like the world was counting on it. Then I left for the military, and my life went its own way, far from home, across the oceans, underground even, and of the many places and humans I encountered, only children had the kind of absolute unconditional love that Zoe had for me. Nearly 20 years after I first picked her up and held that shaking, scared little ball of fur, and I come home again to visit, and to get married in the backyard to my beautiful wife, who is the only person to love me more than Zoe did. Before her mostly blind eyes saw me, she recognized my presence and for the first time in weeks began to eat again. When I picked her up she purred and purred, her hot little tears rolled down my arm and I put my forehead to hers. I realized that she had been there for me, through every heartbreak, every time I would have been alone, every time I thought I was, she was there, waiting to love me unconditionally. Then I looked into her eyes, and she looked back into mine, and told me goodbye. She was happy. And it was like she had been waiting for me to come home so she could finally let go. And she did, right there. Without another sound her eyes closed for the last time, looking at me, loving me, and knowing that she was loved. It hurts to this day.